Well, I'll briefly kick off. So thanks very much for everyone who's joined. More people will join as the webinar goes on, but just a couple of key points. We will record the session and we'll communicate with everyone that initially registered. So anyone who couldn't attend will get a copy of the video. We'll publish it on social media and also send it directly as an email. There's a function to ask questions as the webinar goes on, which the panelists can see, and we'll do our best to answer all of those towards the end of the presentation. Again, what we've done with the previous webinars is record all the questions, and anything that has a relatively generic answer, then we'll collect that information and also share it, because a lot of the questions that we've seen over the last couple of sessions have been really interesting, quite thought-provoking, and whilst obviously the information that we're working with is changing quite quickly as the environment also changes, we'll do our best to make sure we share that information with you guys. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name's Alistair. Most of you who are WorldFirst clients will have probably spoken to me at some point during the account management process. I've been at the business for 6 years, and to give anyone else a background as to what WorldFirst do, we're an international payments provider. We've been around for just over 16 years now, and our core business is helping private individuals and businesses manage their international currency needs, whether it's collecting currency in a local account overseas or whether it's purchasing foreign currency for their goods or services. We're a one-stop shop for currency solutions. So I'll hand over to our partners for this webinar, Stu and Gareth.
Thanks, Alistair, and welcome everybody. So this morning we're just going to run through some slides. Obviously, it's a huge subject, so we'll go through the slides, but try and keep it as concise as possible, and then really just welcome the questions, because it's obviously better for us to be answering the questions that people need to know right now as best we can. So I'm Stu Conroy. I've been running Activate for 20 years, and having run my own brands, we started a service providing to help other brands navigate sort of Amazon, eBay. We'd set up our own website, our own manufacturing in China, and sold into the high street, sold to Amazon, sold to eBay, all of these different elements. And now we use that knowledge to help brands sort of provide more risk managed, robust solutions. So obviously these are strange times in many ways, but we've been through ourselves sort of Icelandic ash clouds and warehouse fires and all sorts of different things over 20 years. So hopefully we can give some insight into some of the things that are happening now, and get help you build more robust e-commerce strategies going forward. So the whole point, COVID-19, what we've been working with our clients over the years is making sure that they have a risk managed solution, but all of that stems from different elements of supply chains, where the consumers are, and a risk management strategy. So with supply chains, a lot of people, I'm assuming on this call, are familiar with Amazon and how that works. And a month ago when we saw Amazon shut down the non-essential categories, lots of businesses were challenged, because there's been all these courses of how to create a business just by simply selling on Amazon through FBA, but all of a sudden people coming out of the restrictions on supply that had happened in China because of coronavirus were suddenly then confronted with Amazon shutting down some of their categories, and that reliance on Amazon caused a lot of people some pain, whether that was if they were selling through FBA, and for those unfamiliar, FBA is fulfilled by Amazon, so that's where you use the Amazon warehouses, or through the vendor program, which is a more typical retail distribution model. So really the importance of supply chains has come through in that period, and understanding how to get stock, firstly getting it out of places such as China, and also then where you're finding your customers. Consumer habits, this is again, I'll keep on using the term strange time, because it really is, but and one of the things we'll talk about in the next 15, 20 minutes or so is, those consumer habits. So like I say, the essential items that were deemed by platforms like Amazon or, Chinese customs at the moment is restricting non-essential items. But if you're home parenting and homeschooling, then, books and toys would be essential to you, but, they'd be categorized as non-essential on some of the platforms. We've seen some big spikes, and it's interesting to look at some of the data where, huge surges in things like vitamins or loo rolls as expected about, 1 month ago. And now we're seeing this transition into things like, hair clippers as people's hairs are, hair's getting longer, and it's getting in that stage where they all need a trim. So the point is that at this stage, there'll be a lot of people looking at different channels, different solutions, and you might find some other channels that are more interesting than just marketplaces, and it's about building robust e-commerce solutions. And that ties into the risk management side, and the strategic channel placement. So what we're seeing with something like Google at the moment is because Amazon's no longer marketing Amazon no longer marketing on Google. So we're seeing all our website clients suddenly get, huge sales increases because everybody's buying online. And although there's a kind of nervousness about the economy as a whole, those people that are spending it online, or in the supermarkets, but more so online. And it's really about getting the right channel management in place so that you leverage that risk and make sure that you're streamlined to take advantage of the opportunities. So one of the things we were looking at is just, Amazon people is a bit like Marmite at times. People either love it or hate it, but I think you can only admire just how strong their data and how on top of that whole data process they are. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, they were able to switch off their Google marketing because they no longer required that as much. The demand was there already. But also, they were able to very quickly switch off categories or extend delivery times, so they could focus on the key work they wanted to do and that was most important to them as a business. So that's what we need to be looking at, as e-commerce solution providers, or if we're running our own e-commerce brands. It's just the power of the data that Amazon, Amazon's huge, and yet they were able to orchestrate the whole marketing, the whole category management, very quickly. And I know in this last point we said about long-term strategy, but that agility around their data is just the thing that, we work with a lot of retail brands, and retail works at such a different pace. But it's important that, that we use the data that's there and know exactly what it means. And whilst we might not be as big as Amazon, you can certainly use a lot of the platforms that are out there to see what's driving your sales or where your customers are coming from. So yeah, as I say, some of it's very skewed in terms of what's going on at the moment. So overall online retail sales growth actually just decreased. But as we'll see in the next slide, it's interesting to see what is happening, what's growing, what's not growing. But also, Wayne Gretzky famously said, he's a famous ice hockey player, that, you want to go to where the puck's, what made him such a successful ice hockey player was going to where the puck was going, not where it'd been. And I think that's important when you're building an e-commerce strategy going forward, is to really look at, what these spikes are at the moment, and then where the future is. So there's massive variations per sector at the moment. If you're selling cashmere scarves, it's probably not a great market, but seeing huge spikes in things like, as I said earlier, like clippers, but also like sports equipment, all these sort of home fitness, the gym shut, so yoga mats and things like that. And really, we've got to understand what's going to happen in 3 months' time. As we build our e-commerce strategies, what's that going to look like? There's still a bit of uncertainty over when we'll come out of lockdown in certain countries. It is starting to happen, but what does that look like? What does it look like in August, September over here? What will people be buying? And then work now on your strategies for then around SEO and PPC. So this is just a slide that sort of shows some of the things that we, dishwashing supplies, because suddenly everybody's cooking 3 meals at home a day and things like that. So, and typically some of the sectors you'd expect to be struggling at the moment, but you'd expect to pick up later in the year. So again, unprecedented times, and I think when building a strategy, it's looking at, I think some people have been taken by surprise by what's happening at this point, and what they thought would be essential and what is non-essential. We work with war paint, makeup for men, and it might be one that you think wouldn't be so essential at this time, but everybody's on Zoom calls. It was a breakthrough brand anyway, but people want to look good. Home decor, everybody's trying to make their rooms look good for their Zoom calls and things like that. So again, picking up some of these segments, are they short term, or is this how the future will be, in making a decision on how you build for the future? So this is where I hand over to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you for that. So as Stu touched on, what we're seeing from the current crisis is people are being pushed into digital means and methods to get through their day-to-day, whether that be in their work or home life. There's definitely an acceleration of emerging and disruptive models like subscription models and great adoption of video conferencing and more people online shopping. In fact, there's been a spike of 58% increase in e-com transactions year over year. And the places that people are turning to first are the more trusted channels like your Amazons, your eBays, your Zooms, Disney Pluses, and retailers with a strong e-com operation that have a good UX and a delivery options available. The crisis has basically turbocharged the adoption of emerging trends that might have taken, say, 2 or more years to get to where they are today. And on the flip side, we've seen the opposite effect on legacy brick and mortar retailers and businesses whose digital and marketplace strategies were previously an afterthought, really, and on the roadmap, but not fully implemented yet. And now they're scrambling to keep up and catch up with where they should have been probably a year and a half ago. There is now, I'd say now more than ever, a far greater immediacy and need for multi-channel as companies that are still trying to keep trading look for more sales channels to keep trading. And on the other side, there's some that are furloughing, which is a word I'd never heard of about a month and a half ago, and consolidating what they have in the hope that the crisis doesn't last too long and they can weather the storm. My view is that this strategy is incorrect, and where possible, brands and retailers should be putting all their energies into opening new routes to market and B2C options where possible. I'd say the obvious and more established channels like a transactional website and Amazon across the EU would be high up the list of things to switch on and optimize. But lesser known marketplaces, if you actually only just switch slides, I think. Second slide, sorry, Shu.
Yep.
So the multi-channel strategy is definitely a good option for brands and resellers to target marketplaces like your big ones, the big ones you've all heard of, and then the lesser known channels like Frugo, which is a channel doing well in the Nordics and live across 46 countries that offers free translation in a number of those. And channels like Cdiscount, a major player in France with over 9 million active customers and a very established fulfillment solution. So like FBA, you can fulfill stock into their warehousing and they can do the final mile for you. The cross-border and omnichannel strategy is even more important now than it ever was, and implementing the right back-end software to make this task as quick and easy as possible is essential. If you'd switch again, Stu, next slide. So whether that integration, whether that strategy, that software you implement is integration providers like a Limworks or a Channel Advisor, or tax and VAT solutions like Avalar or simply VAT, or currency collection payment facilities like WorldFirst. The tech is out there and ready to help you as a brand and reseller expand. And the current crisis, I feel, has highlighted the need for a fallback direct-to-consumer strategy. As distributors and some B2B sellers are finding they've suddenly just lost a large amount of their sales almost overnight. So having that additional ability to pivot and strategy in place can pivot, as I say, pivot your business model and really help businesses stay afloat. And even with, as Stu touched on, even with channels like Amazon, where they've recently implemented restrictions on FBA, sellers with a hybrid model of a vendor and a seller account with fulfilled by merchant option have seen less of a hit. So as you're into managing and having strategy in place for unknown challenges that may lay ahead. And finally, keeping a close eye on your marketing and the effect the spend is having on your sales funnels is also crucial. During these times, advertising on most of these channels is now cheaper, and we're seeing and analyzing this and seeing where you get the best bang for your buck is essential, and it'll only make your post COVID-19 strategy even stronger. And I think I'll hand this back to Stu now to dig a bit deeper into that. And Stu, over to you. Brilliant,
thanks, Gareth. I'll keep on coughing, which isn't a good song, but
need a cup of
tea. So the important thing for me is that when we're working with our clients, and kind of what happened to me in Activate when we started was, it was enough for me to just look at the bank account and the sales figures each day. But what's happened now is, all these clever data scientist people have made it easy for us to see what's possible with e-commerce. And I think, talking to a lot of data analytics companies, we run our own platform with a US partner, Glue in the US, and run that for Europe. But talking to a lot of other data analytics companies, there's lots of people who aren't, they saw data as a luxury and cancelled their subscriptions. And for me, our clients will get it integrated into our services, so it's not so much of an issue. But it's such an important time to know your numbers, and whether you like analytics or not, when I talked earlier about Amazon, it's just so powerful now. And if you look at companies like Nike and Under Armour, they replaced their CEOs last year with far more operational and direct-to-consumer focused, analytical people, more so than traditionally sort of sales-driven CEOs or traditional sales. So there are solutions out there, and it can cost as little as, there's Amazon-specific data suppliers that start at sort of $20 a month. But for the price of a cup of coffee, you can just see what's happening. And again, some of the challenges I had in my early days of running Activate was, your Facebook marketing person would tell you that they made you £1,000. Your Google PPC person would tell you they made you £1,000, and your SEO person would tell you they made you £1,000. So you'd be expecting £3,000, but you'd only have £1,000 in your bank. And I think that's the point, that to be able to find out exactly where your marketing spend is going is so crucial. So a lot of the folks, I think, for brands, and again, it may feel like they're complex because they have high street, or did have high street, or they've got some high street at the moment, but they'll come back to the high street. And that, even that data can still be very easily integrated into the modern platforms, and all hosted in the cloud, and all, within an hour of transaction across all these channels, you can see what's happening in your business. So, this slide is more, I think, just around Shopify data, but, again, just having those numbers of what it's costing you to get a client into your store in the first place, and then how much they're spending with you and how frequently you're coming is just very accessible data these days. So that's the point, is just, making sure that you've got the data, making sure that you can optimize to understand where your customers are. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Google? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they, so many brands that I see that don't use some of the more traditional methods like email and direct mail marketing. So everybody's at home. Even now, their doormats are great targeting spaces to, while there's not too many people doing direct mail marketing at the moment, but it's a great opportunity to get some awareness. So again, using the data, if you're a small company in particular, you can start, really competing with the big guys. And for those more traditional brands that we help, we've seen that, we can use the data to see exactly how they should be working on some of these marketplaces. But as I say, obviously it's a huge subject of e-commerce. So, keen to hear what people would like to hear a little bit more of, and hopefully answer some questions.
Thanks, guys. That was brilliant. We've got a few questions that have come in. So I don't know if you guys can see that on the chat, but I'll read it out. So it was, I have problems with some products being listed as active on Amazon, yet they cannot be found as a consumer. Any thoughts why this might be?
Shall I take that one, Gareth?
Go on then, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing some strange things. So in one of the categories, we've seen all our clients have to reapply to be seen. But you should see that in the back end of the Amazon account, that there's actually some stipulations that Amazon are asking for extra certification at this point. It doesn't really make sense in some of those categories because they've been selling their product for about 10 or 11 years, but particularly around the PPE sectors, we've seen that.
What's Emily
the
selling?
Other side is, what's that?
What are you selling, Emily? What's she selling?
I don't know if I've got the product on the question here. If she's seen the question, hopefully she'll reply. If not, I'm not sure is the answer.
Well, one of the other sides that you'll also see as well is if you've just launched it, there's millions and millions of listings. So again, if you're not getting traffic to it, it's unlikely to show. We launched a new client the other week, and they were kind of expecting that people, they'd be top of the search on day one. But if they're not getting any traffic to it, then they're competing with everybody else, in that space. So that it can be that, but happy to have a look at specific instances afterwards for something like that.
Perfect. There was another question that came through on the Q&A panel that said, do you think there'll be an impact on inactive products, organic ranking on Amazon after they are live?
Inactive products going, well, sorry, just read that again, Alistair.
So do you think there will be an impact on inactive products and their organic ranking on Amazon after they are live?
The thing that's happening at the moment, and this is where I say you've got to be looking at it and understand how it's operating, because what we've seen is when Amazon shut off the FBA opportunity and some of the Prime listings for clients, and this movement to FBM. So Amazon were actively dissuading you from going to some of these products because they didn't want their teams picking them. So for FBM, which is like fulfilled by merchant, so that's where you can operate your own shipping. So those listings actually went above the FBA listings in many cases, so which I've never seen before. So again, to use a well-used word at the moment, unprecedented. Now, how that goes back, like nobody really knows what that's going to look like until we, all the time these algorithms are changing, categories are being reactivated. So there's no definitive answer, and we don't get access to Bezos towers to know exactly how their algorithms are going to work. But I'd imagine they should revert to some sense of normality. But again, we're going to see some strange algorithm impact over the next weeks and months, I think, until we know where we are. And I think traditionally Amazon haven't really cared about the sellers; they've cared about the customer. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out in how they look after those organic rankings.
Perfect. There was one more question that came through, and then we've got a couple of other ones that were sent through beforehand. But it was, can the panel suggest effective ways of e-commerce sites competing against the competition selling on Amazon?
Their own product, or what? Other people selling their product on Amazon, or I don't understand the. Do you
I think they're talking about the other channels. You know, how do you compete with Amazon?
Yeah, it looks like based on other channels. I mean,
the market. I don't know. Go on, Stu. You take that.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, what's interesting is it was my boy's birthday on Sunday, and 2 weeks ago, my missus was saying, you know, we can't get anything because Amazon can't deliver on time. And I was like, well, why aren't you going to Google? And I have made my wife miserable over the years talking about multi-channel retailing. So I was a bit surprised that she hadn't sort of looked at some of the other channels. And I think that just shows you how much Amazon's made an impact, and has led the way. And people, you know, particularly in North America and UK and some of the other countries have become reliant on Amazon. But you know, this is where we try and build, you know, Amazon should be part of your strategy, but not your whole strategy. So if you were all in on Amazon, you might have become unstuck in the last months. And what we're seeing is on Google, for example, because Amazon aren't marketing there, you're able to get access to these other channel sort of sales. And Gareth mentioned some of the other marketplaces such as Frugo. You know, we've seen it not on the high street. Again, competitive spaces, and you have to pick your battles, but you want robust risk managed solutions so that, you know, I would always prefer to send customers to an e-commerce site in the first instance, so you can build that email list, so you can have better conversations with the customer. The reality is 50 to 75% of them, depending on the categories, will go over to Amazon anyway to check reviews and prices. But, you know, as long as you know that, then you can start making better strategy choices over where your product should be selling. And you know, we're seeing some other sort of reactions to, you know, there's other considerations, you know, how people react to, you know, will they want to continue to buy product from China? Will they, you know, want more UK based products? And for those, they'll be looking more for the websites and you know, awareness on sort of social media channels as to who's making in the UK or in the local country of purchase and stuff like that. So again, I think Amazon's strong, but yeah, it's only 10 years ago or so we were talking about Tesco taking over the world, and that didn't happen. So there'll always be opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just from a currency perspective as well, it's really interesting having spoken to lots of our e-commerce customers when they move into potentially a new geographical region. The major headache that they all face is how do they collect the local currency, and how will that impact their sterling business effectively. So the account managers will have quite an in-depth conversation around where they've budgeted at to make sure that there aren't any surprises. And I think the COVID-19 impact on the financial markets was quite a rude awakening for a lot of businesses that have potentially been a bit lax on their currency management side, or have potentially let it slip down the list of priorities. But if you're running relatively tight profit margins and you're involved in selling or buying something in a different currency, the 20% move that we saw in the space of a week can create real problems for customers. So I think for us, it's about making sure that move is protected from a currency perspective, and that you've always got a fallback strategy or always a base budget level to work off, which is something that our account managers will go into more detail with with our prospects or our customers. But certainly exciting. Yeah, I think Amazon is obviously the go-to the go-to place for a lot of our businesses, but it's a big world out there.
Yeah, but just to follow up on that, Alistair, like obviously you're not going to, it's not a blatant plug for WorldFirst, but you know, when we first moved to WorldFirst a number of years ago, it's because, you know, some of those traditional companies can get almost too big and not see the opportunities. And I think WorldFirst was one of those that really grew from being agile and customer driven and solution provision. You know, one of the traditional banks, you know, was taking so long to get us set up in the US a number of years ago, and that's when we moved to WorldFirst. So That's what I mean. There's always solutions and there's always opportunities, and it's been at the forefront of people's mind in terms of delivering the right solutions to them as a business, and that's what's important right now. And for e-commerce brands, they've got to think of that. How they serving their customer first, and that's again what Amazon have set the benchmark. We've just got to get ahead of them, or use them in the best ways for our own businesses.
Absolutely. There's are you guys okay for a few more questions that we had sent through before the webinar was scheduled?
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
So I'll read them out here. So how do I set up for self-fulfillment for online sales for those used to Amazon only, specifically Amazon FBM?
I feel like I'm hogging these ones, Gareth, but
Yeah,
they are more my area than they are yours, aren't they? But,
yes, that's the fulfillment. Yeah, you can take that one.
Yeah, I think the key thing is looking at the software providers and solutions. So it depends on what size you are, and it's a difficult question to answer in specifically saying, right, go this solution. When you're of a reasonable size, we work with companies like Linworks and Parcel Hub, but when you're smaller, it's just being as agile as possible. And as you scale and move to that FBM model, you just want to keep on thinking about how you automate your systems and streamline them, because technology 12 years ago or so, when we were scaling on the platform, we had to print A4 sheets for every order, and it's just became the printers couldn't keep up at that point. So there are solution providers. It's finding the right solution, and then FBM, you just have to be conscious of things like customer service. Amazon is still monitoring your performance as a seller, so it's easy to set up yourself. It's easy to outsource to a company like ours, but the key thing is just making sure that it's as streamlined and as adaptable to your company as that suits the level of where your company's at is the best advice I'd give. Perfect.
And then the next one's obviously fairly directed at the shipping side. So it's, what are my delivery options, given that air freight has now increased?
Yeah, so we're seeing lots of people considering sea shipping. Sea shipping hasn't really been impacted at this point. So there are solutions, and some of those people again are having to get out of their comfort zone if they've been used to specific air freight companies that are now struggling to get flights out. So again, we've been helping a number of clients with choosing like mail services or DHL, UPS, that there are other solutions. So again, happy to follow up on that if people have specific questions. We work with global partners, so that there are solutions is the key thing.
Perfect. Yeah, it's interesting. Just on a side point, obviously, with crude oil has taken the pedestal of media attention this week, and I think that's only going to add more speculation around around sort of sea shipping and where it leaves that whole industry. That's a whole different ball game. The next question was, should I have my own website if I usually sell on marketplaces?
Oh, I can take this one. There's more at my street. So, well, to be honest, there's no real correct answer. I know sellers that have only used Amazon and got on marketplaces and don't even have a website, and they turn over millions. Or there are other sellers that have both. I'd say it's good to have your own channel, because you set up, as Stu touched on earlier, you've got better connectivity with the customer. And it's always good to, use marketplaces to aggregate new customers and use their existing customer bases. They've got massive customer bases already, and you'll have nothing if you start up a new website. You've got to build it out. I would say ideally have both, and some, in a transactional website that might not turn over a lot in the early days, but push, do some marketing on it, and go on the bigger marketplace to get the initial customers, then try and push them back with the second or third sale, get them to buy into your product or brand. So they come back to you, they learn about your brand through the marketplace, and they buy your website, have some offers on the website that you can't get on the marketplaces, but that's bundles or exclusive to your website only. And the end game really is to direct them back to your own channel, your own transactional website, whether that's a Shopify or eCommerce or whatever, but bring them back to your own store where you can have better management of them, have their data, their email, and you can have a better dialogue with them for future sales and offers.
Excellent. And then the last one here, I think, is probably a question that lots of people have been challenged with. So if I've been largely selling through the high streets with a physical presence, what are the best steps to get online? I appreciate that's quite an in-depth question. You could probably do a whole session on that itself, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I just say they call us and we can help you do it. Shameless plug, but I'd look at marketplaces straight off the bat, because again, they've got existing customers, and it's an easy way again to set up to go cross border. If you're going into France, and you're going to have to market your website, or you're going to have to market yourself in a new country, it's very difficult to do it off the bat. That's why marketplaces are ideal, just to get listed and ranked on there. Use their marketing and ad vehicles to get to the buy box, and piggyback with their assets, and you get an account manager. They'll help you sell into new countries, and it's a low cost, low touch method of getting to new customers, really. So yeah, marketplaces would be my route to online, and you can build out a website off the shelf website, from anything from a Wix to a more transactional, like a shop. We work very closely with Shopify, so I would say look at a Shopify. You can get one off the shelf, a templated one, for as little as less than £1,000. But I think if it was me and I had a brick and mortar, or just historically selling offline, and I needed to immediately go online, I'd look at marketplaces like your Amazons and the ones I mentioned. There's 90 or so marketplaces. We work with integration partners that can plug you into these channels as well. As Stu touched on, Limworks is one of our partners, and we can help really engage with those channels and make the job a lot simpler.
Excellent. There's just one more question that's popped through. So selling on Amazon.com seems interesting. I'm worried about the return shipping costs. Any thoughts or guidance on this?
It really depends how you're set up. So what we did increasingly over the last year or so is, it depends on the product, but we've been doing sort of risk managed launches into the US, because there are horror stories, and I think that's where I said earlier, people either love Amazon or hate them, and I've seen stories where Amazon vendor, which is the traditional sort of retail distribution model, encourage people to send hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of stock over, and it just didn't work out, and then it was like discounting, and the brand had ended up having to front the costs of that. So it's really just deciding, you can't be half pregnant to a degree. If you're going to commit to it, you've got to make sure that you're set up, choose how you're going to operate. We work with fulfillment partners that can run SFP, which some people might not be familiar with, which is seller fulfilled prime. So from ultimately what looks like your own warehouse, you can sell through prime, and again they'll handle returns for you. I think vendor is now only by invitation only, thinking about it, but for the FBA side, we've got reverse logistics partners that can help incorporate that. But you'd have to look at it as a case-by-case basis, as giving the best advice, because some items are easier to make decisions over than some more expensive items, and things like that. So the whole point is that there are solutions, and again, happy to follow up on it with a brief discovery call afterwards, just to answer, or look at the exact category and what the best way of managing those costs, because a lot of people ignore the reverse logistics side, and that can start eating into your profitability.
Excellent. All right, guys. So thanks very much. That's really, really interesting. What we're going to do from our side, obviously, we'll collect the recording. We'll communicate it with as many of our existing customers as we can. We've got loads of clients in the e-commerce space, loads of traditional businesses that are now moving online, and also we've got a huge private client market who do personal payments. But many of those individuals, run businesses in the background. So we'll share this far and wide via email. We'll also repost it and reshare it online, social media. And of course, if there's any questions, any interest from anyone, Gareth and Stu's email are up on the screen as well as mine. We'd be more than happy to answer questions and take that discussion further. But once again, thanks very much for everyone who's joined. We will be in touch soon.
Thanks, Alistair. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Alistair.
Take care.